Coming up next, CityNet 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is made possible in part by TCI and is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Frances Storrs, President of the City Club, and I want to welcome you to another outstanding program. I also want to welcome our live television audience on CityNet 30. Today, we focus on the state of our city with Mayor Vera Katz. We do have two new members that I would like to introduce to you. One is Barbara O'Brien, a retired interior decorator, and the other is Diane Lynn, Director of the Office of Neighborhoods for the City of Portland and currently a candidate for Multnomah County Commissioner. Will both of you please stand so we can welcome you? Next Friday, February 20th, please join us for a special presentation from Kate Michelman, National President of the National Abortion Rights Action League. Her talk is entitled, Roe versus Wade, 25 Years Later, The Promise Unmet, and we will be here again at the Multnomah Club in the ballroom. 2 weeks ago, we began a membership drive, and a task force of 40 members are recruiting new members between now and the end of the month. This is a great time to join City Club. If you join now, the $25 setup fee will be waived. So if you've been thinking of joining, please join us this month. We'd love to have you aboard. We presently have 50 new members since January 1st. We still need volunteers for the ballot measure study to be completed for the May election on the measure which proposes to eliminate the double majority requirement for some elections. If you are interested in serving on that committee and have no conflict of interest, please do contact the City Club office, Paul Leisner, the Director of Research Efforts. Our board host today is Don Williams, member of the Board of Governors, seated at the head table, and business manager for the law firm of Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. He will ask the first question of Mayor Katz. Following Don's question, we will open the program to questions from City Club members in the audience. And if you will begin to line up behind the microphones as Don is asking his question, you can ask as many questions as we can get in to Mayor Katz. We have made arrangements to extend this program until 1:30, as we expect that there will be many questions that you will like to ask. Please make sure they're questions, and please keep them to 30 seconds or less. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part because of corporate underwriting from Fred Meyer, Washington Mutual Savings Bank, and Stoll Reeves, and we are indeed grateful for that support. And now, what a pleasure and honor for me to introduce you to Portland's Mayor, Vera Katz. In a city and state that works, Mayor Katz has been a major force behind these successful workings for over 2 decades. As the author of Oregon's gun control legislation while she was in the legislature, it is no surprise that after the tragic shootings in Portland several weeks ago, she asked to respectfully delay her City Club address. We are most pleased, however, to have her with us today. You all know that Vera Katz is in her second successful term as Portland's mayor. She came to City Hall from the Oregon legislature, where she served as the first woman Speaker of the House and the only person in state history to hold the Speaker's post for 3 terms. Her effect on Oregon legislation was profound and included the creation of the Oregon Progress Board, Oregon's Education Act for the 21st century, and significant efforts on behalf of women. As mayor, she has focused her attention on the police bureau, on Portland's economic development to handle future major expansion in housing and jobs, and on innovations to create government efficiency. She has been successful, and it is no surprise that she was recently awarded Governing Magazine's Public Official of the Year award. But you know all this. I want to tell you something about Vera Katz, your mayor, as a person. Now, believe me, these things that I'm going to tell you aren't found in Vera's official biography down at City Hall. Some of these items are so remarkable that you might doubt their veracity. Therefore, I thought I'd give them to you in a true-false format. Answers in a few moments. True or false? After walking over the Pyrenees with her Russian refugee parents and her sister to escape Hitler's advance into France, Vera landed in America at the age of 7 and grew up in Brooklyn, New York. True or false? Vera's first political office was as student body vice president at Brooklyn College, where she majored in sociology and psychology. True or false? After graduate school, Vera studied modern dance with Martha Graham in New York. True or false? While working in New York as a marketing research analyst, Vera was fired for insubordination. True or false? Vera and her husband moved to Portland in the early 60s because on the map, San Francisco and Seattle looked close enough to visit for an evening's entertainment. Later on, they admitted they were looking at a very small map. True or false? As a young Northwest Portland wife and mother, Vera and her neighbors formed a group known as Loving Hands at Home. They specialized in furniture refinishing, clothes making, and cooking. Vera's chocolate mousse was renowned. True or false? While stripping wax off a floor in 1972, Vera had an epiphany and decided to go and work for Bobby Kennedy. True or false? By 1973, Vera was hooked, and despite her fear of dogs and the fact that she didn't and still doesn't drive, Ray Polani, take note, she took her Brooklyn accent and her winning ways door to door from Sauvie Island to Skyline to the West Hills and beat Fritzie Chenard, who had held her Oregon House seat for 16 years. True or false? In the 70s, Vera showed her integrity and courage by holding a fundraiser in a gay disco on Mother's Day. And the answers: true, 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 maybe true, 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 and true. A remarkable woman is Vera Katz. No front page pictures of her with interns, no siree. Unless those interns have come down from the medical school at her urging to help her and her city build a dike against a rampaging river. How lucky we are to have you leading us, and how delighted we are to have you with us today, Mayor Katz, to describe the state of the city of Portland. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Mayor Vera Katz.
Thank you, Fran. That was a gracious introduction. But to Fran, I say, don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue. Before I start my presentation, I want to take this occasion to salute a colleague of mine, Councilmember Gretchen Millicafori. Would you come up here? Gretchen and I raised hell long before we held public office. I don't have to remind this group that the City Club was our target when you wouldn't let us join. And it was about 25 years ago. So Gretchen, this is a small token of my appreciation for all the work that you have done for this community, for this city, and for women's rights. I don't know if you remember that Gretchen wore a helmet and carried a rolling pill, and I had a colander on my head. And some others in this room were very active, and we were graciously and politely, at least at the beginning, we were a little ruder toward the end, asking our male colleagues to please leave the club until they would allow women to join. And you did, and we thank you. Members of the City Club and guests, members of the Portland City Council, citizens of Portland, thank you for giving me the opportunity to report again on the state of the city. And a special thanks to Commissioner Jim Francisconi, who allowed me to take his scheduled time before the City Club. I also want to thank Portland State University Center for Population Research and Census for providing much of the census data that I will mention in my remarks today. State of the City speeches are usually about reflecting on the past year's significant accomplishments. But I've come to learn that the passage of only a year is not long enough for us to see what one poet calls the ever-whirling wheels of change. Cities only reveal themselves over time. For example, over time, one building was a schoolhouse on a block in downtown Portland. Then there was a Portland hotel, and later the Maya and Frank parking structure, and today, Pioneer Courthouse Square. Over time, a city can deteriorate or continue to improve, but it never can stand still. I was first inspired to enter politics by Robert F. Kennedy, who looked at America and said simply, "We can do better." In Portland in the early 70s, you and I, and many others like us who loved our city, took a hard look around and said, we have to do better. Back then, the New York Times described Portland, and I quote, as a city in the act of destroying itself, unquote. A HUD report on the nation's cities called this time the decades of decline. Portland was no different than the rest of the nation. Yes, Portland could have gone the way of Newark or Detroit, but our commitment to sound planning, to Senate Bill 100, to metropolitan regional government, and to the urban growth boundary set us down a different path. One that reversed the loss of city residents, contained growth, avoided sprawl, and stopped the decline. And local efforts helped on the way. The downtown plan 25 years ago, the Central City Plan a decade ago, the Portland Future Focus Strategic Plan nearly a decade old, Prosperous Portland, and Central City 2000 just a few years ago. As a result of our efforts, By the late 80s and early 90s, what we now call Portland began to recapture the population it lost in the 70s. It was 26 years later that we finally realized a 3% increase in the number of city residents. After 2 decades of hard work by the people of this community, the state of the city is better and stronger than it was 25 years ago. In many ways, Portland today is a vision made real. We are truly a Renaissance city. But a great city is never frozen in amber, and resting on our laurels is not an option I will accept as mayor, nor should you. In the rapid change and rapid growth, now more than ever, we must protect and improve our quality of life for those of us who live and work here today and those who will follow us tomorrow. I believe a great city begins as an act of the imagination. What I imagine for our future is a more prosperous city for all of our citizens, with better jobs that support our families, affordable housing that shelters us, public schools that educate our children to the highest standards, safer neighborhoods, more parks, natural areas and open spaces that nourish our soul, and a transportation system that serves the entire state and gets us where we need to go safely and efficiently. It has been said that a vision without action is merely a dream, that action without vision just passes the time, but vision with action can change the world. Portland's vision must be shared by its people and its government. There are danger signs that we are losing the public's confidence in our ability to manage the pace of growth and change. Portlanders are anxious about our growing, changing city. Neighbors say they're nervous about traffic congestion and speeding cars as the number of houses spread up in their neighborhoods. They fear that we may have lost the ability to maintain and improve our streets and roads, build neighborhood parks, and protect our rivers and streams as growth begins to impact their community. I firmly believe that we can meet our obligations to the Regional 2040 Growth Management Plan and accommodate our fair share of the population growth in this city, including our targets for new housing and jobs. And I believe we can do it while preserving the livability of our neighborhoods and protecting the qualities that make Portland such a very special place to live. When I say we can meet the challenges of change and growth and protect and improve Portland's quality of life, I make one important assumption, an assumption learned as a lesson from 25 years of experience. The city of Portland and the surrounding communities of this region are in this together as partners. There is no other way. We are regional partners in creating and sustaining jobs, in providing affordable housing, and in the support of a workable transportation system. Because of the importance of this regional partnership, we must soundly reject the Sizemore initiative to abolish Metro. Passage of this initiative would be a step backwards. It would deny us the ability to take the future into our own hands as we did 25 years ago and shape it to our will as we must do for the next century. I said that a great city was an act of the imagination. Just imagine where we would be today as a city, a region, a state, if Bill Sizemore's community be damned thinking had prevailed in 1973. The eyes of the nation are on us, for we are engaged in a noble experiment. We have the best tools in the country for well-managed growth and for our shaping our quality of life. We have nothing to fear if we use them wisely. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is to cover some problems that pose the greatest risks and challenges to us in the next 25 years, in jobs, in transportation, in public safety, in education, and neighborhood livability. All five are interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. First, creating family jobs. Current economic trends are favorable. Over the last 4 years, unemployment dropped from 7 to 4% here. While most cities have lost jobs, Portland has enjoyed 14 years of annual employment growth. In fact, this year, Portland ranks third in the country for generating new manufacturing jobs. Not only that, but Portland was named as the best city for small business in the nation by Entrepreneur magazine 3 years in a row. And Portland's downtown ranks fourth in the nation as a prime area for investment. And I say with great pride, ahead of Seattle and San Francisco. However, economic prosperity comes with no guarantee of either longevity or equity. And we must take steps now to make sure that the good times reach well into the future and include those people who may have been left out. As we deal with change and growth in a healthy economic climate, one trend is of special concern to me. Our median household income adjusted for inflation fell between 1989 and 1996. Real per capita income also fell. We must not become a city of rich and poor, privileged and dependent, comfortable and insecure. We can't survive as a great city if few are doing very well, while most are scraping by. To address this problem, the city's economic development efforts must be very strategic, closely tied to education, transportation, and land use. One of the best ways to diversify our local economy as we seek to meet Metro's 2040 goals to create over 150,000 new jobs in Portland by 2015 is to aggressively pursue our target industry strategy. Our target industries, high technology, biotechnology, health and professional services, the metals and transportation equipment, creative services, just to name a few, thrive here in Portland and provide well-paying jobs because of our location, because we have the vendors and the services and the institutions that support these industries, and we have the ability to train and educate a workforce to meet their needs. We are proud of firms like Oregon Steel, Precision Cast Parts, ESCO, Gunderson, and Freightliner in metals and transportation equipment industries, OHSU, our biggest employer in biotechnology, and Portland Software and Will Vinton Studios in the creative services industry. Availability of office space is also key in our ability to attract jobs to the central city. Last year was a blockbuster for Portland area office space construction, with 1.2 million square feet of new space completed, and vacancy rates are close to a 10-year low. And for the first time this decade, work began on 2 downtown office buildings, the Fox and ODS Towers. Other proposed developments include the Third and Oak office building, the Paramount Hotel, the Westin Hotel, another Marriott Hotel, and Pioneer Place, too. Retailers such as FAO Schwartz, Eddie Bauer, Crate & Barrel, Virgin Records are showing interest in downtown, as well they should. Portland is a great place to work, to live, and to shop. This past year, we also kept 2 major employers in the Central City, Standard Insurance and Liberty Northwest, and successfully wooed KinderCare to move its corporate headquarters here from Alabama. We should continue to expand that downtown and Central City job base. The biotechnology industry and the creative services industry, along with retail and professional service jobs, and the expansion of the convention center are key components of implementing recommendations of the Central City 2000 report. But all these employers need one thing: skilled workers. Improving worker skills will raise their wages and median household incomes to match those of the region. In a fast-breaking economy, 60% of manufacturing revenues are from products developed every 2 years. Think about that. New products every 2 years. The cities with the smartest workers win. That's our competitive edge, not cheap wages. That's why I'm working with Multnomah County Chair Bev Stein and Washington County Chair Linda Peters to create a state-of-the-art regional workforce training system. The need to build school-to-work, welfare-to-work, work-to-work systems is more critical now than ever before. The fact that Intel imports half of its new workforce from out of state should be a wake-up call for all of us. One final note on the issue of jobs. In Portland, 50% of single mothers with children under 5 have incomes below poverty level. To lift these children out of poverty, their mothers must receive training while they work, and their child care needs must be attended to. As we work to create family wage jobs, we must continue to address and eradicate any vestiges of unfairness or discrimination. Ethnic minorities in this city have increased threefold in the city since 1970. This diversity is healthy for Portland, but it challenges us to ensure equal access to economic opportunities. And certainly city government must lead by example. That's why I've pushed with my city council colleagues to implement the Fair Contracting and Employment Strategy, a national model that provides opportunities for growing minority and women-owned businesses to prosper and flourish. That is also why I will continue to defend Portland's civil rights ordinance that ensures equal treatment of gays and lesbians in employment and in housing. Everything else that we do to protect and improve our quality of life gets stuck in a traffic jam if we don't have a transportation system that connects our communities, reduces our reliance on the automobile, and increases our travel by bus, light rail, streetcar, bicycle, or by foot. How are we doing? not good enough. Oh yes, Portland has set 2 transportation goals for the next 20 years, a 10% reduction in vehicle miles traveled and a 10% reduction in parking spaces per capita. But the number of automobiles in the Tri-County region grew 36% in the last 10 years, outstripping population growth. And in the 4-county area, the number of people driving alone to work increased 80% from 1970 to 1990. That means 227,000 more cars on the road. 23,000 of those additional cars were driven by Portlanders on their way to work, and many of them landed through our neighborhoods. Our transportation challenge in the years ahead is threefold. The first challenge is to develop the region's transportation infrastructure as an interrelated system and get people to use it. When I say a system, I mean just that, not a jumble of independent components. How kids walk to school is part of it. So is how 1,000 containers leave the Portland docks bound for Chicago. Connecting downtown to Lloyd District should be part of the same system that connects Portland to Tokyo. It's essential that we complete the South-North light rail line, complementing it with close-by opportunities for people to live and work, and providing more bus connections between its spokes. I will continue to push forward our unique public-private partnership to get light rail to the airport. With the help of many partners, this will become a national model for building an important leg of the light rail system without federal dollars or new local tax dollars. And we will build the streetcar line. First for the central city to connect Northwest Portland to the River District, then to PSU and North Macadam, then over the river to our east side neighborhoods. We can implement this transportation strategy and still be stalled in traffic congestion unless people use transit. To encourage that use, transit stops must not only be safe, but should become transit service destination stops for riders to pick up groceries, drop off clothes to the dry cleaner, and their children to child care centers. To also encourage transit use, the time has come not only to expand Fairless Square, but also to seriously consider a total fairless transit system paid for by a regional tax on parking lots. Tolling our roads and bridges should also be part of the new revenue mix. Our second transportation challenge is to ease the nightmare restrictions on transportation funding. For example, interstate money can't pay for patching potholes or enforcing traffic laws. Light rail money can't help transport elderly and the disabled. Airport revenues can't be used to get people downtown. The third challenge is to fund the system at the level we need to make it work. When it comes to transportation funding, legislative sessions are starting to resemble giant panta matings in a zoo. Expectations very high. Results almost always disappointing. Our streets and highways are suffering from years of investment postponed and maintenance delayed. To the next legislature, I say, don't leave this state a legacy of potholes and crumbling bridges and traffic jams. Do your job, raise the gas tax, and eliminate the restrictions on its use. Peace in the streets is part of anyone's definition of quality of life. As mayor and police commissioner, public safety remains my greatest responsibility and my third area of focus. Violent crime in Portland, murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, was down again this year. And I'm proud to add, thanks to the work of the chief and the Portland Police Bureau, the lowest in 26 years. Unfortunately, property crime is increased due to more auto thefts. Over the last 5 years, I worked to increase the number of police officers from 800 to 1,026 to keep up with our expanded city boundaries and population increases. The city auditor's annual survey shows that from 1991 to 1997, the number of people who feel safe walking alone in their neighborhoods increased from 77 to 85%. Very statistically significant. Now, the fact that we are safer and feel safer is the good news. But the brutality of 2 weeks ago shows painfully we must never let up, never. Not as long as there are those among us who hold no regard for human life or arm themselves with weapons only soldiers are expected to carry. As police commissioner, I have spent many privileged hours in the presence of Portland's police officers. I have never known a more dedicated or courageous group of men and women. And on behalf of the citizens of Portland, I want to thank them again for their service to our city. In my last State of the City speech, I spoke of the broken windows approach by which quality of life crimes are enforced before they become problems of crisis proportion in our neighborhoods. By keeping an eye on small as well as large crimes, we can expect to reduce overall criminal activity and remind citizens that the rules of civility apply to us all. In this zero tolerance for crime, citizens and police must work together to enforce all laws and prevent all crimes. It means each citizen in this city is personally responsible for keeping our community safe. So don't jaywalk when you see me standing on the corner in downtown Portland. Zero tolerance is reflected in the gun violence strategy I announced recently. We've taken the ideas from cities, their best ideas, including Boston, and added some of our own touches. And we did this to do three things. One, target the worst drug traffickers and violent gang members for prosecution. Two, crack down on all violence in neighborhood hotspots. And three, disrupt the flow of illegal guns. And if U.S. Attorney Chris Olson and Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Shrunk have their way, criminals in Portland who use a gun in a crime will forfeit their right to remain in this community, face immediate prosecution, and receive the stiffest sentences under either federal or state statutes. I applaud those efforts. Next month, Commissioner Francisconi will unveil strategies that complement our law enforcement efforts by preventing gang and youth violence through employment opportunities and after-school programs. But the events of 2 weeks ago illustrate that we've got to do even more. Technology now allows us to complete an instantaneous background check on anyone seeking to purchase any kind of gun. It is time to push the state legislature to require it for rifles, shotguns, and legal assault weapons anywhere they are sold, to prevent the weapons from falling into the wrong hands. The broken window philosophy also means zero tolerance on graffiti. Graffiti, such as the recent desecration of the Central Library, degrades urban life and deteriorates our environment as surely as dirty air and water. These are not budding young artists in search of a palette. They are vandals, like dogs leaving their trail through the city. Graffiti is not an art. It is a scar across the face of our beautiful city. I want to propose first that we eliminate the current restrictions that require a building owner to give us written permission before we can remove the graffiti. This bureaucratic nightmare can delay action for weeks. Second, we will designate graffiti-free zones in areas of the city hit hardest by graffiti crime. In each zone, we will provide surveillance, enhanced cleanup, and strict prosecution of offenders when they are caught. And as we meet success from these relatively small zones to begin with, the zones will expand. One final thought on public safety. Zero tolerance is not achievable until we end overcrowding and matrix releases from the county jail. Police officers must keep prisoners sitting in the back of patrol cars, often waiting for as long as 3 hours because of lack of booking space in the county jail, a devastating waste of time and money. Because of overcrowding, we released over 6,000 people last year pending trial. County Chair Stein and District Attorney Shrunk and Sheriff Noley are trying very hard to fix this problem, but it needs to be fixed once and for all. My fourth area of focus is a red flag for our future, one of overriding concern for the quality of life for families with children and for all of our citizens. And I'm talking about education. Today, we are finally keeping families with children in the city after seeing a dramatic decline of these families in the 70s. But we cannot sustain that momentum without a quality public education system. As author of the Oregon Education Act for the 21st century, I believe that public education is not only America's greatest invention, but our most powerful competitive advantage. For we know, you all know, that people without education and training For them, the new century will not be a renaissance, but an economic dark age. People without education and without hope will no longer belong to this future. That's why the Education Act embraces the vision that in Oregon we will have the best educated citizens in the nation by the year 2000 and a workforce equal to any in the world by the year 2010. Yes, we need stable school funding. But I do not believe that the failure of schools to perform up to expectations can be blamed totally on their funding problem. I believe that in the clamor over funding, there appears to be a collective denial about the importance of education reform. About half of our students in the Portland Public School District do not meet state educational standards for math and reading. In one high school, 85% of the sophomores cannot meet state standards. 45% of students have grade point averages of D's or F's. And 15%, this is in the same school, have no grade averages at all. This should outrage us even more than the funding crisis. Schools had 6 years to plan for the Certificate of Initial Mastery and for higher expectations. We're beginning to run out of time to effect real and meaningful change. Inevitably, and it's starting already, there will be voices clamoring to lower our new state standards if our children fail to meet them. My voice too will be loud and clear, and I will say loud and clearly, no. We cannot allow lower standards, and we cannot allow lower expectations for our children. Our children deserve better than that. Now, local government has not sat on the sidelines. Portland and Multnomah County gave schools $29 million over the last 3 years. And I traveled around the state just before the legislative session to begin building a statewide coalition for additional funds for schools, and that coalition was able to add another $200 million for education, and also worked hard to pass the bond measure that added additional $150 million to schools statewide. The City Council and the County Commission also support the passage of the business income tax increase on the March ballot. I think we have the right and the duty to demand fiscal and academic accountability. Acting Superintendent Diana Snowden confirmed our frustration over the Portland School District's inability to manage itself properly, and she's beginning to tackle some of these long ignored problems, and we will be there to help her. To assist her efforts, I propose that she consider appointing a chief accountability officer to carry out the school district's own resolution from last May that required schools to develop plans on how they will meet our new state standards. Those plans for each school were due in September of last year. Unfortunately, the timeline has slipped to much later than that. This community deserves to know what our schools are going to do to improve the performance of all, underlined, all its students. Schools that are not performing should be placed on probation and made eligible for help from principals of other public as well as private schools and from our university partners. If performance is still not achieved, these schools should be reconstituted. When I ran for mayor the first time and mentioned the importance of school to this city as well as to all cities, people would look at me aghast and ask why. That's not the mayor's responsibility. No one asks that today. In Chicago, the school system's financial crisis and poor academic achievement got so bad that their legislature gave that responsibility to its city and to its mayor. We are nowhere near that point yet, but I want to mention it as a possibility to assure parents in this city that I will not stand idly by as the most successful urban public school system in the United States teeters on the abyss. It will not happen on my watch, and I know that the people of Portland would not allow it. My fifth area of focus is about improving neighborhood quality of life for the future, for those who live here now and those who live here tomorrow, will live here tomorrow. We must approach the task of meeting our housing targets by building and supporting strong, healthy, unique, and vibrant neighborhoods. And we must approach this task maintaining our strong commitment to build affordable housing. But housing alone does not make a neighborhood. Densification does not create community. Whether we're working downtown in the River District or in the Lentz neighborhood in outer Southeast Portland, our efforts to improve neighborhood livability and increase the number of housing units should go hand in hand. That means green and open spaces, natural areas, better transit, safe streets, and thriving neighborhood small businesses. Home ownership has increased from 1990 to 1996, reversing a downward trend from the 70s. But housing prices have nearly doubled since 1990. We will continue our efforts to invest in affordable housing and to promote home ownership. I've outlined an approach to improve neighborhood livability while we meet our housing goals. But the next question people ask is, well, where will we fit our new arrivals? Let me walk you through how I think we can do it over time. First, to improve neighborhood livability while keeping growth pressure off existing neighborhoods to the greatest possible extent is critical. And we will then have to look at focusing much of the new development as we can in the central city. That is where we can best accommodate the fastest growing segment of our population, the elderly, the singles, and the couples without children. We will do it in the River District and in North Macadam developments. These developments have the added benefit of bringing life back to the banks of the Willamette River, helping us recapture the river's edge, and help us extend the greenway from Terminal 1 south to John's Landing. And today I propose we seriously begin planning for two new areas in the central city for higher use development: the Rose Quarter and the West End Lower Goose Hollow part of downtown. We sent a letter to the Blazers last week asking them to be a partner with us in developing a master plan for the neighborhood surrounding the Rose Quarter Arena and the Memorial Coliseum. Entertainment and commercial hub with opportunities to build office and hotels and improve park access to the river. As for the West End Lower Goose Hollow, it has enormous potential. It is between downtown and Northwest Portland, with a light rail running through it, a new park block nearby, easy freeway access, and soon a streetcar to run on 10th and 11th Avenues. In the 1970s, we cut a massive swath through 12 blocks of this neighborhood to build I-405. It was a thriving and prosperous neighborhood of schools, religious institutions, businesses, and bookstores located right near the public library. Now, normally, I don't advocate that we cover up our mistakes. But in this case, I would make an exception. I propose that we cover sections of I-405 and bring back a great neighborhood. Seattle did it and built their convention center over their freeway. Above I-405 and in the neighborhoods surrounding I-405, we have the potential to build parks, design an urban high-tech campus right near Portland State University, provide parking, create pedestrian walkabouts, build housing, office, and retail space. The limitation is just your imagination. There's no question this will be a challenging project. And as I look out at some of my city bureau directors who would be responsible for starting to plan this, they're a little nervous. But it's also very exciting for the future of this city. And to my surprise, it was included in the downtown plan 25 years ago. Again, both the Rose Quarter and the West End Lower Goose Hollow projects, with the River District and North Macadam, will relieve the pressure to build more housing in single-family neighborhoods. Second, we will also improve neighborhood livability and meet our housing goals by focusing new development in existing neighborhoods along main streets, town centers, and transit lines. The Civic Stadium housing and parking and retail project along the West Side Max Station in Lower Goose Hollow is an example. So is Belmont Dairy, a once abandoned eyesore, now thriving with Zupan grocery store below, and perched on top housing is another example of a project built along an existing main street. Third, we will also improve neighborhood livability and meet our housing goals by revitalizing disadvantaged neighborhoods. A priority of mine in the first years of office, and still is, was bringing North and Northeast Portland back to life. It began with the city's purchase of the old Walnut Park, Fred Meyer, now home to the Northeast Precinct and retail shops. It has been sustained by the completion of the Albina Community Plan by this community and the MLK Boulevard revitalization strategy. Now, with the help of the state and the city, $1 million will be spent to rebuild the boulevard itself. To rebuild it to be more pedestrian-friendly with new lighting, new trees, new banners, on-street parking as we remove the sections of MLK median. We've begun similar efforts in Outer Southeast with the completion of the Outer Southeast Community Plan 2 years ago. The city now has committed over $1 million this year to stimulate development activity in the Lents Town Center, including the purchase of 100,000 square feet in the Lents Business District, engineering work for key transportation improvements, and a feasibility study to establish a Lents Town Center Urban Renewal District. Another way we will improve neighborhood livability to meet our housing goals is by addressing housing needs of families. We must protect and nurture owner-occupied housing. Neighborhoods of single-family housing should be the last place we look to accommodate our growth. And when it does happen, it should be in character with the existing neighborhood. That's why design standards and design review are so important. Portland may have to grow, but we don't have to grow ugly. Carl Abbott, one of our own urban historians at Portland State University, said, and I quote, "No great city has yet taken Walmart as its public symbol or put a factory outlet mall on its municipal letterhead," close quote. At the beginning of a new year, we wish the best for our friends and family. Toward the end of a decade, it's appropriate to wish for something larger, particularly when that decade is the last of a century. My wish for Portland is that together, we once again imagine great things and continue to build on 25 years of accomplishment. It is within our power to choose the kind of Portland we want. Portland can be known for its art, communications, and technology while still preserving industrial sanctuaries. We can be the creative capital of the West with ties reaching across the Pacific and around the world, a truly international city. A Renaissance city made for original, inventive minds, for people with more and better ideas to invest and prosper. A city that welcomes the new while keeping the best of the past, those amenities that are the urban experience. Pedestrian-friendly sidewalks where people hang out, cafes, pubs, coffee houses, theaters, parks, restaurants, bookstores, libraries, museums, and galleries that tie together our past and our present. Women and men who see the city as a gateway to economic independence, who see it as the best place to express themselves, to raise a family, to live a good life, and who dare to dream. A city, Margaret Mead wrote, quote, "where any day in any year there may be a fresh encounter with a new talent, a keen mind or a gifted specialist, a place where groups of men and women are seeking and developing the highest things they know," unquote. Portland is such a great city because we have great people. And great people will continue to move here because we are so special. My own story, Fran told you about a little of it, has been one of moving west, always west. My parents from Russia to Germany, me from Germany to Paris, over the Pyrenees to Spain, then Portugal, then New York, stopping finally in Portland. It was not long before I knew that in Portland I had found a home where you can make a difference and where you can see it in your lifetime. Now, this is a good thing because the next move, west, I would have hit China. So instead of that, I'm bringing a bit of China to Portland when we build the Chinese classical gardens in Old Town, Chinatown. The Chinese Classical Trust people would never have forgiven me if somehow I didn't fit this into my State of the City speech. So they had to wait till the very end, but I think it fits. James Baldwin wrote, "There is never a time in the future in which we will work out our salvation. The challenge is in the moment. The time is always now." You and I have a phenomenal opportunity to once again shape the future of Portland. So in the end, the state of the city changes over time, but some things never do. The hard work, the challenge, the excitement, the fulfillment of participating meaningfully in the life of a community. For all of that, I want to thank my colleagues on the City Council, government and business leaders, and my fellow citizens of Portland. And if you are ever asked why we do all of this, say this: because quality of life is not just about the place we live, it's about the way we live, to advance the dignity and well-being of all of our people, to create more community, more compassion, more peace, to create a city of hope, opportunity, and accomplishment, to leave our children a city better and more beautiful than was given to us. Thank you all very much.
First two announcements before we start the questions. The program will be extended till 1:30, so we have some additional time to ask questions. Secondly, questions are restricted to City Club members, and City Club members should restrict themselves to 30 seconds, so it's a question rather than an address. Mayor, I'm glad I prepared 4 questions today because you gave correct answers to 3 of them already. So I'll ask you one that's a little less high profile. In 1994, the City Club did a report entitled Intergovernmental Planning Between the Regions, and it addressed concerns about the lack of planning in the area of land use, transportation, the airshed, and economic development between Clark County and the Portland metropolitan area. By 1994, the City Club had seen the wisdom of admitting women, and you were kind enough to be a witness at that for that committee, and you expressed concerns about the implications of the report. So I'd like to know what the city has done over the last 3 years to resolve some of those concerns and what's on your agenda for the next year.
Thank you. I think the credit needs to go to our regional partners for including Clark County as part of this regional community. And a lot of our agencies, as you saw just recently, did an incredible job with our partners across the river in planning the potential nightmare of the closure of the bridge. My partners on the City Council have been very active in meeting with the Mayor of Vancouver, as well as the Mayor of Seattle, to begin talking about not only regional cooperation, but cooperation among us in Cascadia, a vision that many mayors have held over the years. And so in the area of land use and transportation, the work is slowly progressing. In the one of the areas that I think we need more thought given is economic development. Their problem is that everybody goes to Vancouver to live. They think they can escape taxes, but they don't have jobs in Vancouver, so they travel to us to find the jobs here. And so I need to spend a little bit of time to try to convince the mayor that not only do we need to build that economic partnership among our 3 counties, which we do right now, but also to include Clark County. Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Katz.
Hi.
Hi. Erwin Mandel, City Club member. My wife and I are one of those fairly new residents of Portland. We came here shortly after you began your first term, and we're rather simple citizen residents of downtown.
There's nothing simple about you and your wife.
Thank you. You gave a very thrilling description of the challenges and plans you have for this city, and also an accurate description of the dangers of failing to fulfill these plans. I wonder how long the city will continue to have your stewardship for the fruition of these plans.
Next question. Now really, let me answer it. I don't want to give you a response. Now's really not the time to even think about the next 4 years. I have 3 full years that I have to dedicate myself and working with the city council and the county and our regional partners in beginning to fulfill the vision that all of us have established for this community. At the appropriate time, you'll be the first to know.
It's never too soon to think about it.
I'm Herb Crane, a member, and I would like to tell Mayor Katz that I completely agree with your agenda. But I also want to express my disappointment that at no time did I hear the word arts. Twice you said art, once in relationship to graffiti, and once at the close of your speech. Never did you talk about the arts in Portland. And the quality of life that you praise so highly is dependent to a large extent on the arts.
Yes.
Where do we fit?
You fit, and my record shows that you fit. Now, I didn't talk very much about a lot of other subjects. You were patient enough for about 50 minutes, close to an hour. I don't think I could have pushed it, but wait till you see when the budget is developed what we are planning for the arts.
Thank you.
Let her go first. This is one of the women that I was telling you about. She is Washington Chair Linda Peters, and she's a candidate for the 1st Congressional District, and she's a wonderful human being to work with.
Well, thank you. And I'm a City Club member, so I'm going to ask this question. As we're working on the Workforce Development Board, as you well know, and I think a lot of other folks do too, our focus is on both high expectations for the programs that deliver services that help people qualify for good jobs, but also we're trying to build support so that those organizations can do their job better. When I listened to you talk about the Portland School District, I found some irony in that for years before all the budget cuts started, within the district, we were providing those kinds of supports to help schools do their job better and do the reforms and the changes. And the departments that were offering those services got cut as some of the first casualties. What are your thoughts about how we can help schools meet the challenge, given the fact that there aren't central departments that are able to do the kind of support for change that we were hoping to be able to do before the budget cuts?
That's a good question. And I may have appeared to be a little harsh, but I think I was probably more provocative than harsh.
You succeeded in being provocative.
That's good. That's good. And that's good that people will start talking about not only
Yeah.
the funding, but the quality of the education for our young people. Part of the national scene in this particular area is that there are a lot of states and a lot of communities that are embracing the higher standards and education reform. And the teachers themselves embrace it, but then they turn around and they say, but what is it that we need to do? So there is absolutely no question in my mind that the kinds of dollars that needs to be put into the schools is not only for staff development, but for the curriculum development.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I'm not sure it always belongs in each of the local schools. We have schools that have built the curriculum, and we have a State Department of Education who's responsible for the curriculum. And so I think that kind of collaborative work needs to continue to provide those tools for the school districts around the state. There are schools, as I traveled around the state, there were schools that actually did build their curriculum from the ground and from the ground up. And it seems to me that we ought to be sharing that kind of information with every school district, and the State Department of Education should be the conduit.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick follow-up. Can we also look to better partnerships with the private sector to provide the kinds of tools and information and skills that'll
Oh,
help?
absolutely. I did mention Chicago. I came from Chicago. I'm on the National Center for Education and the Economy. We studied what was going on in Chicago, and there's a school, Gage High School in Chicago, where an association of industries, not one company, but an association of industries has adopted the school, has adopted the curriculum, has built the apprenticeship program, and it's an information sharing that goes both ways. The industries tell the school that these youngsters need this kind of math and this kind of science, and the school districts are prepared to provide that kind of curriculum to meet the industry needs, and they have paid for it. So there is a wonderful partnership, and the schools have adopted business partners to assist them. But I think we now need to begin to think even bigger than just one company.
Right.
We need to begin to look, how do we cluster these industries and build a curriculum around those clusters so that our youngsters can either go to community college or higher ed or advance to the job while they make the decision whether they want to continue their education now or 2 to 5 years from now.
Thanks.
Okay? I think you're the last question?
Ray Polani, a City Club member. Madam Mayor, as someone who is free from the car, and I believe doesn't even have a driver's license, for a viable downtown, do you favor a Hawthorne Bridge downtown crossing for the North-South Light Rail connecting to the First Avenue existing light rail, saving a lot of money, and the working bus transit mall?
I can never satisfy you, can I? Right? It would be inappropriate for me at this time, since the work on the environmental impact has not been completed on crossings, and so I will not respond to that question at that time until the work is done, and the City Council makes the decision.
Hopefully later, huh?
Later.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I know I do indeed speak on behalf of all of you and on behalf of the citizens of Portland in thanking Mayor Katz for her service, for her comments, and I know that you would join me in saying to her, we can and we will. Thank you very much.